Hey guys, what's up? What's going on? This is Mike. I'm filling in for Joe again in his weekly intro spot. I'll keep it quick. As always, just our two standing announcements. First, we'd love to see you join and participate in our movie discussion group on Facebook. That's How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The Facebook group. And second, as always, you can snag some merch for yourself at our web store. That's howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com. Other than that, check out our review of Christopher Robin last week and stay tuned for another drunk review next week. Not 100% sure what that will be. I'm recording this a bit earlier than we usually do, but most likely it'll be Crazy Rich Asians, maybe The Nun, something like that. So stay tuned for that. Right now, here's our review of 8th Grade with special guest Alex Branchik of Bright Eye Deliverance, which is a great reggae rock band from our area. This is a great, thoughtful review of Bo Burnham's feature film debut. So let's get right into it. Enjoy.
Hi, my name's Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we'll be reviewing 8th Grade.
Alright students, let's go ahead and get started with our 8th grade superlatives. First up, most likely to succeed. We have Elsie Fisher.
What? She doesn't even go here!
Hey everyone, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting roller coaster tycooned and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And thank you to Mike Moserino on Facebook for that synonym suggestion. That's an appropriate synonym suggestion. Mike Moserino, obviously from our past episode of The Dark Tower, but also the band Bright Eye Deliverance. And we are in a Bright Eye Deliverance weekend here. We've got Alex Branchik, bassist of Bright Eye Deliverance here.
Hello.
Hello, yes. And also bassist of Maya's Fall Victim. And we've also got 2 weeks ago on the episode The Meg, we've got Sean Henry from Bright Eye Deliverance as well. So that's why it's appropriate that Mike Moserino submitted this.
Nice transition.
Yes, long-winded way of getting into that. I did two things at once there. I introduced Mike and Alex at the same time.
Wow, I saw that and I liked it.
Thank you.
When you did that.
I appreciate that you appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, what are we drinking?
This week we are drinking Manayunk Brewing Company's Swan Dive. It's a Pina Colada Ghost Ale. It's ghost, right?
Ghost.
Like a spooky ghost.
I think it's all ghosts.
It's going to be a spooky ghost with sea salt. So we've previously had stuff from Manayunk. They had a really good what is that called? What type of beer is that
Porter?
called? Yeah, porter. That tasted just like a Reese's peanut butter cup.
It was a chocolate peanut butter
Yeah,
porter,
yeah.
I think.
It was.
And then they had another flavored one that was like a...
Oh yeah, it was
coffee
it was
or
like
something?
mint chocolate chip.
That's what it was,
And
yeah.
it wasn't that good. But honestly, yeah, if you guys ever get the chance, try the Manayunk Brewing Company. It's just like chocolate peanut butter porter. I hate porters, and
Oh,
it was
Crunch. Crunch was the brand of
yeah.
it. Yeah, Crunch.
Crunch. That's what it was called.
I think so.
It's the best porter I've ever had. So I'm interested to see what this tastes like.
So they do these kind of novelty, very flavorful beers.
Yeah,
That's definitely
They
their.
do some wild
their-
stuff. You're a big Ghost
Oh.
fan, right?
I love ghosts.
You believe in ghosts?
I believe in ghosts.
Oh man, that's a strong coconut-y.
There's a lot going on in this one.
Ooh. I kind of like it.
This
And
is
I'm
like-
not a big Ghost fan.
Same. This
Or like sour beers in general, really.
right. Spirits, ghosts.
Too spooky for me.
You can pick them all up at the liquor store. Yeah, I like this.
The salt is a nice touch, and then it's like it's not crazy flavorful. Like it's not novelty flavorful. I feel like it's a subtle pina colada taste. It's mostly the sour part that comes through, but this is kind of like blending those other flavors in there to tamper that sour flavor.
Yeah, I could drink this at the beach.
I could finish one whole can of this and nothing more.
I could probably have a few cans of this, but
3 hours later. Give me another!
Yeah, really. But yeah, I would recommend you buy it. It's good.
Sponsor
If you're
us, man.
in that, yes,
We keep
Manny
buying
Young,
your
get at
fucking
us.
beers.
Yeah, and they keep putting out like newer flavors, so I'm interested. Like every few months, they'll put out something new, and it hits the
They
stores.
should put out a How Many Fingers beer.
They should. Hey, Manioc Brewing Company, get at us.
Just give us free advertisement that we don't have to pay.
Right.
That's what we're doing for them. Anyway, let me read the IMDb description for 8th grade, and then Joe's got some very sparse Joe notes for this.
We're gonna see what happens.
We got a lot to talk about, though. But 8th grade is about an introverted teenage girl
We
tries
have this IMDb curse. Or did I say Christopher Roberts?
Christopher Robert.
Instead of Christopher Robin.
An introverted teenage girl tries to survive the last week of her disastrous 8th grade year before leaving to start high school.
That's really down in the dumps that they refer to her 8th grade year as disastrous.
I think that's a bit harsher.
I think it is. I think like maybe if this film opened where she like spilled a lunch tray all over herself and somebody pantsed her and then the principal was like,
What a loser.
yes. That sounds disastrous. But like most of this film is like in her head. Yeah. Okay. So 8th grade is Bo Burnham's first film. Bo Burnham of YouTube fame, really.
And then stand up after that.
You're right. Yeah. And I mean, previously he does have experience with directing. He's directed his own I think he's only done 2 stand-up specials. One was What? Period. And one was Make Happy. He also directed Gerard Carmichael's 8 stand-up special, and he also directed Chris Rock's most recent stand-up special, Tambourine. But yeah, this is his first film, though. It's under A24, which we all know and love. This is obviously, written and directed by Bo Burnham. It's starring Elsie Fisher, Josh Hamilton, Emily Robinson, Jake Ryan, and Fred Heschinger. The music is by Anna Meredith, and besides that, I think it premiered at the 2018 Sundance Film Festival. It was a part of the U.S. Dramatic Competition section and everything. Besides that, it's been a critically acclaimed film. It's been a pretty small opening.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot. Yeah, there's not a whole lot else that I have in my notes because last night Mike convinced me to play Fortnite instead of taking notes. But
just a little behind the scenes there.
Yes.
I do feel like it's kind of tracking sort of similarly to Lady Bird in a way, and that it's by A24. They had like similar release schedules where they were like, did really well at festivals, and then small release for a couple weeks, then like a quote unquote wide release at like 1,500 theaters, and then pretty universal acclaim across the board, and obviously some of the subject matter, about young girls being very relatable to them. I don't know. It's tracking a little similarly to Lady Bird. I wouldn't be totally surprised if we see a tiny bit of Oscars play. Obviously, A24 knows how to market to the awards season pretty well.
Yeah. Sorry if the mic just picked up me cracking every bone in my body. But
Joe is, in fact, okay.
Yes. Yeah. I said that last night, but then I also know that A24 they have to know what they're doing, and if this shows up at the Oscars, I'd kind of be more surprised, because I feel like other things like Moonlight and Lady Bird did actually premiere to the public during Oscar season.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this and Hereditary are kind of like more of a summer play. I'd love to see Hereditary at the Oscars. That would be great.
I do kind of feel like we might see one or, some random categories for that.
Yeah.
You might be right.
So it's almost like maybe don't have as much confidence in this as they did with like Lady Bird.
But I do feel like Get Out doing well last year is kind of evidence of
definitely, right.
Does the schedule really matter anymore if the film is that good? Like, and is there just a right place to put a movie out, not based on where you predict it to be awards wise, but just, you know, where the movie going public is, you know, schedule wise there. I mean, because Get Out, that was like February or March or something like that they came out, like really early, like about as early as you can be, like in that award season. And obviously it didn't hurt it at all, really, at the Oscars.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about this movie. I mean, we could talk about Bo Burnham, I guess, if we wanted to. I mean, I feel like I remember him from, I don't know if I was in high school or maybe the end of high school. I thought he was my age, but I think he's 26 or 27.
Oh, I thought he was almost 30.
Same. But he's a little younger than us. But yeah, I think he just kind of came up with these kind of
quirky songs on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was the big one was like, I'm Bo Yo.
Yeah.
Just like really cringy to look back on it now.
It is. And then since then we've seen him do stand-up, and then, I mean, he's been on like that Pete Holmes podcast where he really flexes his intelligence and knowledge and everything.
He did have that one show that they tried to build for him on MTV for a while.
I forgot to talk about that.
What was that called? That went nowhere.
Yeah, he had an MTV show that was called Zach Stone is Going to Be Famous, or Gonna Be Famous. And it kind of, as much as he like, I feel like he both desperately tries to escape this kind of like YouTube fame and like, but all of his major projects, and maybe this is only what he can sell, is like, okay, but she's uploading to YouTube, and okay, but Zach Stone is going to be like a YouTube star, kind of, you know?
I guess write what you know.
Oh, no, yeah.
I did kind of, I mean, to maybe sort of transition into 8th grade, I kind of expected there to be more about YouTube culture in it, like from someone who grew up at like the peak of like YouTube, and I don't know if maybe he just feels out of touch with it now, and because I know he was very conscious of like not trying to insert his 8th grade experiences into and trying to just write about what is 8th grade like now for someone in 8th grade.
Same.
So maybe he feels like he doesn't know what YouTube is like now that he's not really a part of it anymore. But I was expecting a little bit more, like, you know, to me, like in the trailer, it kind of seemed like a YouTube movie, and that was sort of an appealing thing to me.
Yeah, same.
As someone who's always been interested in the culture of YouTube and.
Yeah, and he was on the I just recently saw him on like the H3 podcast, and he was talking to like Ethan Klein about like, and Ethan was like, I don't really know how to explain like modern YouTube to you, but like Bo was like, I just like hate how like nowadays like you feel like you have to like market yourself on YouTube and kind of just be like, hey guys, like if you like remember to like subscribe and like remember to rate this, and like, hey guys, since you last saw me, I've been doing this and everything. And Ethan's kind of like, you know, like we all didn't upload in like 2006 when like some like YouTube staffer would like see your video and then like feature it, and then you get like 1 million subscribers. He's like, it's really hard, and there's a lot of marketing involved now, like to do that. And I feel like he's kind of like bringing a satirical edge with that in this, but I'm also kind of like, dude, that's like how it is now. Like it's not as easy as it was when you were like, it was just kind of like, so I'm glad he didn't go that far into YouTube, because he doesn't really understand. Like he understands,
he's out
like
of touch with it now, yeah.
Right, he understands like a bit of Vine culture, even though like he very famously had like a pretty popular like Vine or whatever. And you hear like a lot. I love like these kind of like sound bites of like kids being like, LeBron James and like, you're not my mom, or so, you know, like during like the assembly, because I imagine that's like what, or like the principal like dabbing or something.
Oh yeah.
And those are all great touches, but again, I like Bo Burnham has some like opinions about Vine that I'm like, dude, you were wildly out of touch.
Yeah.
Like where he was just kind of like, you know, they changed like where you could like edit a Vine, and like it was just like that's when it was dead, and like it should have never existed after that. And I'm just kind of like, okay.
like it's some untouchable art form that you can't mess with.
Right, yeah.
How dare you
The
ruin this
integrity
format.
of Vine.
This isn't pure anymore.
Right, yeah. Yeah, just strange. He has a lot of very, not that I don't, like just very just cut and dry like opinions. As I smash my fucking laptop here.
I guess it's good too, like, not to dive too much into the YouTube culture because they just kind of show her trying to be the typical vlogger that's kind of always existed. And I think if you start bringing up like who's current at the time, it dates it a little too much. Which, even though there's a bit of that talking about Snapchat and social media,
And Rick and Morty.
meant to be a little more timeless because I think anyone can kind of connect to this regardless.
Right. If they were like Jake Paul or something, you know, like
Yeah.
during this, it would date
Logan.
it immediate. Yeah.
Becomes a little less accessible to like the older audiences, or you know.
Well, I guess I don't know if I wanted specific like name drops of stuff in YouTube culture, but just like it's its own community, you know, like there's a whole like sect of like socializing that takes place on the internet through social media, and I feel like this movie doesn't really go into that. I don't know if that's the best place to start talking about this movie because I have a lot of positive feelings about this movie. That's like one of my few complaints.
I totally get that. And
is that I don't know if it nails.
It's kind of this bastardization of what.
I also
the
don't know if
YouTube
any movie. I don't
community
know if any movie
is
has
kind of-
ever really nailed like
They haven't,
what it's
right.
like to interact with someone online. It's a really hard thing to get across in the film format.
I didn't really take it as like a movie, even though it is a big part and it sort of punctuates all these different sections of the movie with her new YouTube entry. I didn't necessarily take it as YouTube centric. I took that just more as a vessel to convey like, here's a girl who has a lot of thoughts and wants to be liked but isn't. I just
Yeah.
took it more as a way to show her personality, like what she wants to
Yeah.
be.
It's a narrative device. It's a sort of captain's log. Where, and somebody, I forget who brought up a pretty good point. It's just kind of like in every teen movie or any movie like this, like a character like this would kind of have like a best friend where she could verbalize some of like what she's feeling. And even though she's not necessarily like verbalizing what she's feeling like in these vlogs or whatever, she's saying something.
It's kind of like, I mean,
yeah.
it's understood usually to be the opposite of what she's saying. You know, it's kind of almost like an unreliable narrator,
Right.
You know, because she's talking about like, oh, like sometimes you just got to go out and be confident while like she's like crouched in the corner, like having like anxiety or whatever.
I love that,
I did have
though.
that.
Yeah.
I have that same complaint about. I felt like she needed a best friend in this
Yeah.
movie because I feel like the movie is at its heart about like
even
like
though
shy people, they have something to offer. It's not like she has a few lines that I like a lot where she's talking about like, you know, I feel like if people got to know me, they would know that I'm not this shy person who,
Right.
you know, I just choose not to talk in school. And I feel like the best way to show that is through like a best friend who she's comfortable with when they're hanging out, she's loud and funny and she is like this outgoing person because that's usually what it's like. Like
Right.
I don't know many people who are shy in all circumstances of life, you know. It's usually a comfortability factor.
That resonated with me a lot.
Right.
Because maybe not 8th grade, a little bit later, but that was me through high school, was just kind of a ghost because not because I didn't want to talk, but I just didn't. And if somebody spoke, somebody spoke to me, I'd speak back.
But did you feel that
connected
was
with me.
just not being comfortable in those situations? But
did you
you
have-
feel like you opened up in like private social situations
Yes.
with people that
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Did
that
you
actually-
have
through YouTube
did you
and
have
stuff,
absolutely nobody?
No, not quite. That's true.
Right?
That's,
Yeah,
like,
that's
that's,
a
that's
little
she had
weird.
nobody.
Yes, uh-huh.
She went home and had her computer.
Right. Yeah.
She had the camera facing her.
like she could have maybe had like a friend that was like for some other reason, you know, even further down on like the social ladder somehow, you know. And
Because she's making a conscious effort. She's not.
Yeah.
You know. I don't know.
it's hard for us to sort of be like, well, why is she?
Right.
You know, like it would be more relatable if she was like talking a lot with her friend, but then we can see the contrast of her like clamming up in public and, you know, being awkward and not talking. It would choosing not to talk.
It would. It is because it's. I don't. Everybody has somebody, and I don't mean to say that in a very like optimistic way. It's just like even if you're in the lowest point of your life, it's just there's kind of always going to be somebody.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't know. Maybe the narrative that or just. Yeah.
It's just missing that
to
one
some
thing,
point. Yeah, it is missing something.
Especially because that's a point that she tries to make is I'm not this quiet person. I just choose not to talk at school. And
Right.
like, all right, well then we need to see her like being like outgoing and, you know, bubbly and jovial and, you know, comfortable with someone.
People who have parents who are like, fucking shut it down. You don't have any social life. You come home and you do chores and like maybe you work like a part-time job kind of. Those people have like best friends, you know, like it's just weird that she lives in this circumstance. It at some point it kind of turned into like a weird like privilege thing where I'm like, no, we can't feel that bad for somebody this privileged. Again, I really love this film, but this is just like
Or if they were going to do this, it could have been like they moved there or something, you know, or she's
Right.
new.
Or
like,
if there was a fucking scene where she did something like unholy by like middle
Yeah.
schoolers and like even the lowest of the totem pole like did not want to speak with her, but there was no really backstory with her either.
yeah,
And
I kept waiting for there to be something like with her mom,
Right,
like being
yeah.
out of the picture, like
Right. And her mom like made like this humiliating scene or something.
Yeah.
And like that's why this girl who's making a conscious effort, who has nothing really wrong with her, is utterly and completely shunned. And that was the second problem that I had with this is that, and I know Bo's definitely trying to be naturalistic. I love like this one quote that he did with somebody. Jesus, I really need to attribute some of this information to somebody, but he said, it might have been on the H3 podcast, but he was like, I was casting and a bunch of like 8th grade girls came in and they were like confident, but they were like pretending to be shy. And then, the Elsie Fisher came in and she was like shy, but pretending to be confident for Bo. And Bo's like, yep, this is what I want. Fuck, I already forgot what the complaint I was going to make was. The almost like antagonistic popular girl, like the person that she goes to the pool party with. I thought she was a little like cartoonish.
it was a little over the top. And
But again, I don't know how to direct 8th graders, so
yeah. Well, I just feel the concept of it was maybe a little over the top. Like,
Right.
I think it was better when they put them in situations. Like, I thought when they had the birthday scene, the whole pool party scene is fantastic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But when they're like opening the presents, it's like so cringy. Like, you can like hear like everyone gets quiet when they're opening like Elsie's thing, and it's like shedding this light on like this whole culture of like, oh, what did you get her for? Like it was a whole thing when we were younger. It was like who got her the best
Right.
present and who knows her the best. And like when you put her in that situation, like it's a little less cartoony for her to be a bitch in that scenario.
Yeah.
To be like,
Yeah.
oh, you got me this Go Fish game, like cool, whatever. My friends got me
But when
cool
she's
clothes.
standing in the
when she's in the
hallway,
hallway,
yeah.
that part I really don't like because I feel like this movie is, for the most part, trying to be apologetic to social media. To be
Yes.
like, here's a haven for people who
Yep.
feel like they don't have a place in the outside world and they can connect and, put their thoughts out there. That's what her whole YouTube is like her putting out these thoughts that she's not brave enough to express, like when she's not the only person in the room with a camera. But then like you have like her encountering the two girls in the hallway and she's trying to give her the thank you note for inviting her to the party, and they're both just like looking at their phone, not even like listening to her, and that becomes sort of like against social media and phones and
Kinda
stuff like that.
contradictory.
It feels like it's against the message of the movie, and I was like, well, what is your opinion then on social media? Like, I don't even know. And I know in his interviews he's talked about like, I don't really have a message about social media. He's like, I'm just as much in it as these 8th graders are, He's like, the first thing I do when I wake up is check my phone, just like everybody else who talks about how much they don't like social media.
Right.
But then I feel like to put a scene like that where you have these 8th grade girls being like, huh? What? I didn't hear you because I was looking at my phone. It's like they probably put the joke before maybe the message of the movie
Right.
in that scene. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, what's the punchline? Okay, they're looking at their phone too much and they're not paying attention.
Yeah.
It was a little weird.
Like right off the bat, like I eventually got into it. Anna Meredith like actually has some like really good music. And
I love the soundtrack.
She
to
wrote
yeah.
this music. It's a little jarring at first like when she's like walking into school, and I was like, this soundtrack is not working for me. But it definitely eases into it.
It's unique for sure.
Yeah.
I thought it was Bo Burnham actually, because it
Really?
reminded me of all
Right,
his like
it's very
these little key
electronic.
pieces during his stand-up, and then so I didn't even actually know until you said it. I just kind of assumed that he did score it.
Right, no, because it does. It sounds like something that would be, and it is fitting. It almost sounds like something from his like early kind of YouTube days.
It's like
or
upbeat
something.
and quirky, but it also has that like almost like electronic, like youthful EDM side to it for some of it. Like
It's also like
there's the one song they play it in the trailer that sounds like it's that. What was that one band that had that song about
The Beatles.
the Stones, man?
Stones.
It started with a P. Pompeii.
Bastille.
yeah.
Bastille, yeah. You know, it's the song from the trailer that I'm talking about with like it's like synthesized vocals almost.
Anya or Enya.
I don't think it's an actual song, and it's from the soundtrack, isn't it?
Sail Away or whatever, the Anya song or whatever.
Is that the one that's in the trailer?
Yeah.
Hold on, throw my point out.
And
the
then
window.
she's I thought that what is
It must be like a remix of that or something, or sampling that.
No, that's just like the Enya song. It was in like a bunch of like commercials in the 90s for like Pure Water or whatever. And yeah, it's just like a European song from the 80s, 90s kind of.
Completely disregard.
Oh no, yeah. But that is, I mean, that's like a song that you hear like if you're in like a yoga studio or something, and it's very like meditative and Zen kind of. So I thought that was like when they use that in the film, that's pretty interesting, just because she's on like social media or something, and that's where she like depending on how you see it, it's either like jarring kind of like that with like social media, or it's just that's her kind of place that she goes to be Zen or whatever. Anya, I don't remember who it is, but yeah.
I do love. I feel like there is a lot of like just great straight up comedy moments in this. Like definitely his sense of humor comes through very well.
Oh, yeah.
Like I laughed out loud at a lot of this, but especially the stuff that would take place in the school with like the teachers trying to relate to this like younger crew, like you brought up, like the principal dabbing was like one of the funniest scenes. And then the sex ed video being like, oh, it's gonna be lit.
Yes.
And then the LeBron James at like the auditorium.
I wish there
it was
was
like a few times throughout it. Like someone would always be saying LeBron.
They definitely
James.
do it. They do it again during the like school shooter thing. I wish there was a little more of it, just because maybe I saw all of it in like the trailer. Because I think that's how they get people to come in. Is like, let's clip all of these
funny parts.
Yeah. But yeah,
there's some others. There's some like I think even just in there's humor that like it's not just like a Bo joke. It's like humor through filmmaking, like him exploring this new medium that I thought was really cool. Like I like when they're doing like the superlatives and they're like, oh, like best eyes for a male, and it's Aiden, and they have like that like intense song play,
zooming
like
in on his
eyes.
self.
Like that's a great.
Oh no,
that's hilarious.
That was definitely the standout humor for me. And then when you see him at the pool,
he's got like the Golden State Warriors like jersey on. Like it is very keen on like it felt like real eighth graders a lot in this movie, and like that's absolutely like what like eighth grade girls would think is like a hot guy in like eighth grade.
Yeah.
It's
panning up his knobby knees with the intense synth music playing and stuff.
Yeah, very keen there. He has a great eye for a lot of stuff. I think there's a lot of great like montages in this movie. Like my favorite one being at the pool party. I think the whole pool party scene is like the big set piece of this movie, really, because it's such a relatable like eighth grade thing.
Oh
like,
yeah, definitely, yeah.
And them like kind of setting it up like this like almost like horror scene of like, oh, a pool party, like.
Especially when she's trying to get through the door. She's like, okay,
Oh,
she's already
God,
forcing
it's
herself
not
into it. She
working.
can't get through the door.
Yeah.
That hit me
That
so
always
hard.
happens, yeah.
But then like when they have like the montage just like showing what all the kids are doing, and it's just kind of like this like it's showing like his keen eye for like it's almost like filming them as they're like aliens, like they're doing all these weird things. Like the one kid's doing like the backwards like handstand thing. The one guy's flipping his like eyes inside. It's like all the weird shit that like kids do, like as their bodies are like growing and changing, and it's like viewing them as like alien life forms almost. I thought that was like really effective in that scene.
That's effective, but see, I don't know completely how I feel about this yet, because you see that during the trailer or whatever, and you watch that in the film, but it's almost, so we have like, tonally, we kind of have both this, it's kind of mumblecore documentary kind of film that's following her, and it's like observing like these 8th graders doing these weird fucking 8th grade things. But then we also have scenes that are very just oriented around her. Like, I mean, again, to take place in the same film, when she goes in the bathroom and like her heart is beating or whatever, and you can hear that, and like things are going like a little crazier when she's walking back and forth with the phone. Like, these are just very kind of how she's feeling. And it kind of mixes those two, and I'm still not sure if it worked for me, kind of. You know,
Like is this too cinematic for you, or
yeah,
or
like,
for the film?
Well, it's almost both biased and unbiased. It's out of her head and it's in her head, kind of. And I'm still not sure if that worked for me. Again, I saw it last night.
I think he is literally trying to do both at the same time. You're right.
Oh,
He's trying to tell
it's like
Kayla's story, but he's also trying to be like, because I do think the film is about the sort of overall message of like, you know, in 8th grade, you're so focused on like who you want to be that you don't really realize who you are, and you also don't really realize who everyone else is. So like that scene is like, you know, this grand sweeping shot, and she's terrified of walking out in this swimsuit in front of all these people.
Right.
But then the montage is trying to show like, oh, they're all fucking weird too. Like everyone's weird in 8th grade. They're all trying to figure out who they want to be, and like none of them probably even realize like, you know, who, you know, the things that she's feeling insecure about. They're all too busy doing weird shit with their eyes and spitting water onto people and jumping in the pool. And it's just, I got the message that I thought he was trying to get across in there. I do agree that I feel like maybe the film style was a little different, because like you're saying, it is like kind of mumblecore filming before that, but then you have this kind of grand sweeping orchestrated shot, you know, where everyone's got to move at the exact right moment to get everyone in, and it was a little too technical maybe for the rest of the film.
I found that effective though, because I thought that was all very much her eyes taking in the situation, like, okay, this is what I'm jumping into. And you know, like you're saying, even though everything appears alien and hilarious to us, like the weird thing that these kids are doing,
it's terrifying.
That's for everybody on this side of the lens, but to her, it's not weird, and she's still overwhelmed by it. It's still, and that's a lot of what got me with this movie, is her not realizing how ridiculous some of these things are in these kids, but still being overwhelmed by it. And then it just cuts back to her. You know, you can feel her like taking that breath, and that's what a lot of what I found myself laughing at was how she's perceiving the situation, whereas how explicitly it's ridiculous.
Right, where she's intimidated by the kid who's flipping his eyelids inside out, you know? Yeah, and you can also take the perspective of kind of like, I heard somebody compare like that scene and, you know, the eyelids inside out and the girl doing kind of like the back walkover or whatever is like as like a nature documentary kind of.
That's how it felt to me, very like Animal Channel.
Yeah, but you can do that like nature documentary, and then I guess those can kind of go into their own narrative of like one animal kind of, which would make like, I don't know, I'm trying to make a like I'm trying to excuse like the switch back and forth.
It was just it was a slight visual difference of, you know, not that it was necessarily like shaky cam, but it wasn't like, you know, orchestrated. Here's the tripod. Here's exactly where she is, you know. And this was very much like a sweeping on a dolly or whatever they use to capture that smooth motion shot. You know, it's a little different.
Did you see any of like just a quick deep cut kind of? Just because I know, what was the film we reviewed with Connor?
It Comes at Night.
It Comes at Night. And
Trey Edward Schultz.
Right, and we knew about that director from Bo Burnham when he went on You Made It Weird, and he was talking about how like Krisha was one of his favorite films ever made, which was also an A24 film. Did you see like any influence? I saw a lot of influence like from Krisha in this film, kind of.
I think so. Of like taking social situations and almost turning it into like horror at times. Like, I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the point that you were making with, like, what did you see from...
Oh, nothing. Just, exactly what you were talking about. Again, when she would go into the bathroom, like, before the pool party, and you'd hear, like, the heart beating and everything, and just... It was very...
It took stuff that was happening in someone's head. It made it very real and visceral for us as a viewer. So there's some stuff with this film where, like, I think at times it sort of just does what it wants to. And for the most part, that's effective. Like when it's being, I think, very realistic and doing what it wants to, it works. But then sometimes I think it sort of just does what it wants to and it steps outside of realism a tiny bit for me.
Yeah.
And it's a little less effective. Like the big problem I had was, like, I love almost like everything about the pool scene, but when it starts to end and she's inside and, like, she's had a panic attack before, she's had a horrible time the entire time at the pool party. She's in there, like, calling her dad, being like, can you come pick me up? I'm fine. Just come pick me up, like, as soon as you can. And then she's just sitting there, and then her crush walks out, and she has this incredibly awkward interaction with her crush where she stumbles over her words. She says something really stupid about, like, oh, yeah, like, I sometimes charge my phone sometimes, too. And, like, she's too smart to not notice that that's, like, a really dumb thing to say. But then immediately after that, because the film wants to have this overlay of her doing something while they're narrating, it cuts into, like, sometimes you just gotta, like, put yourself out there, and she goes and she immediately sings karaoke. In the real world, when you have that awkward interaction with anybody, much less your crush, and you stumble over your words and you say something really stupid, you sit in that chair for probably the rest of the party and be like, I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah, you're
like,
done.
That's it. The party's over. Your life is over as far as you're concerned as an awkward, shy teenager. Like, that I thought was kind of not very realistic for me. Like, because that's not even realistic for me as, like, a 28-year-old at a party, like, trying to navigate social interactions, much less like a 13 or 12-year-old girl, like, at a party, and your crush walks up to you and you say something like, I like to charge my phone too, and you stumble over it. Like, she knows that she said something stupid. I don't know why the script doesn't have her, like, dwell on that. Like, because that would be a very realistic thing for me to be like, well, Dad, now you have to come get me. Now it is an emergency. Like,
right.
My life is over.
Call your dad again. Yeah, there's a lot of scenes like that, though. I feel like that karaoke scene, especially, I was just kind of like, yeah, she goes through, like, this kind of humiliating, like, pool party where she doesn't feel comfortable, like, going to this pool party. It was a pool party that this girl made her mom, like, this girl's mom made this girl invite her.
Because she wants to fuck his dad.
Right, yeah. And then she has,
I like that little detail of her, like, when it's, like, wordless because there's, like, her narration going on, but when she welcomes her at the door, you can tell her mom's like, where's your dad? Oh, damn it.
I didn't pick up on that, but you're right.
Oh, yeah. but yeah, and then she doesn't feel comfortable in her swimsuit. She's just out of her league with these kind of popular kids, and then she gets her the wrong present, and then she fucks up with her crush, and then, yeah, again, for the purpose of serving the movie and this kind of narrative device, she, like, goes and sings karaoke, and I was like,
it would be a great scene.
I literally said, like, to myself, I was like, is this the end of the movie?
Like that would be a great climax scene.
Yeah, but no. And that thing keeps...
Why is she learning the message of the movie, like, before any changes really happen?
And that keeps happening.
They don't explain where this upswing, like, where she's been down, should be way down after the interaction with her crush. And then for some reason she's like, well, you just got to put yourself out there. Right. And then I sing and nobody hates it.
Right. And the kids are like...
Yeah, they all seem like they're like, this is pretty good.
We're into this. We're when she's opening the gift or whatever, like, kids are like,
they get actively quiet when her gift comes around.
Oh my god, how embarrassing! Kind of, you know. And it's just it plays to the I don't know this. It happens a lot during this film too. It's kind of also like, I think, like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to this popular girl, or like, she approaches the popular girls twice. She approaches the guy that she likes once. At the end, she tells off the girl. Like, it's just, like, uncharacteristic. Like, it almost seems like the main character is, like, bipolar or something. Like, the way that she'll approach people. Where it's just, for me, I was just kind of like,
Well, I get
don't
her.
totally
I get her
see the
in
motivation.
I get her in the movie putting herself out there,
Right.
Because again, I do think the movie is about like you don't know who you are yet, and you're trying like you're trying on all these different masks of like maybe I am the person who goes and tries to do karaoke. I just don't get it right after that scene, and like I think you need to have some kind of explanation for. Where do you get the courage to do that after a really low moment? Like, because I can barely understand.
Well, that's
sort of
all the scenes I just brought up. I don't think those were. I was just kind of like, where's this coming from?
Well, they didn't immediately follow an awful moment, I guess. You know, it's her coming from
Right.
her midline, like baseline, like just, you know, bored and quiet and shy. And,
Those all did kind of stem from the karaoke scene. So even though it was awkwardly timed, I guess that was kind of that spark that she sort of tries to coast off of through the rest of the movie. Because it's from that point on, then she starts trying to talk to the popular girls.
yeah, and they are
crush.
trying to get that narrative, like literal narration in there of like sometimes you just need to pretend that you're confident even if you're not, like is what is happening during that karaoke scene.
But it's also like a lot of her kind of. It's so strange and like it's so like accurate that like these kids are basically giving like these self-help talks like they're fucking Tony Robbins or something, you know, like that's funny. But again, I don't know, I thought a lot of that was kind of to contradict what was actually going on in her life, and then like some of it did start to match up, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I don't totally understand what this narrative device is trying to do anymore. If now she's literally doing what she's saying, and like, I guess I don't know.
There is a whole like, so there's obviously like the shy, awkward thing, and then I think this movie tries to explore like underage sexuality in a weird way. Maybe not a weird way. I think it's effective. I just feel uncomfortable because it's Bo Burnham writing it. Like, I think I would feel so much more comfortable with all the stuff that happens in here, even though it turns out to be very relatable from everyone that I've heard from. You know, every like, you know, girl that I've ever talked to that's like seen this movie has been like, oh, it's like the most like, it's the story of my life in like 8th grade. But is there not something that's weird about like this being written by like just a white male guy? Like being like, here's what 8th grade's like for, like, why didn't he write 8th grade about like, you know, a boy growing up in that age? I don't know.
Right, but and I even like heard
work with someone, you know, like it's like there's not even anyone else like credited on the screenplay, like you know.
Well, that's and I even heard him say like something like, I have seen complaints about this too, and I was so surprised that the marketing team, I think I was telling you about this, was like, it's the movie of the Me Too generation, kind of. And I get that a little more after some of these scenes. But also, if I was Bo Burnham, I'd be like, let's fucking kill that tagline right now. Because I'm a guy who wrote about an 8th grade girl.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm a 28-year-old guy who wrote about an 8th grade girl. And like, also, even if Bo Burnham led the most PG life, whatever, somebody's going to come out of the woodwork and be like, actually, Bo Burnham one time, you know, he's been a touring comedian, you know, like, I'm so afraid for him.
Yeah.
A little bit. But,
it's just, you would think that, like, if you were like, I'm going to write a movie about what it's like to be an 8th grade girl, you would be like, do I know any women who can help me write this screenplay and give them some credit on this as well? Like, again, it turns out to be very accurate in a very well-written screenplay, very relatable in a lot of aspects of it, but I don't know, where was the research done and where's the credit for those people? And I don't know. It makes you view a lot of these scenes through like a kind of like a weird light, right? Like, it's, again, not to say that they aren't effective. Like, I do really like, I think some of the funniest parts of the movie are sort of analyzing, like, and I guess those are parts that would come from Bo, is like sort of like male sexuality, like in that, where like I think the funniest part of the movie by far is when Elsie, or Kayla rather, hears that Aiden broke up with his last girlfriend because she wouldn't send nude photos. So then during the shooter drill, she goes over to Aiden and she does the whole really awkward thing of like, oh, the most embarrassing thing just happened. Like, I was just looking through my photos and I saw my nude photos or whatever. And he's like not paying attention to it at all before that. The moment she says like nude photos, he's just like, and looks right at her.
He gets most of his dialogue from the film in that like 2 minutes.
And then he, like, at the end of that scene, he's just like, do you give blowjobs?
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I really like, I feel like at the beginning of this film, there's a lot of, like, weird kind of, like, cuts of just 8th graders being 8th graders, and then there's like that one cut of that kid who puts like his shirt around his knees and like over his face, and he's like masturbating during a film, kind of
really obviously, but trying to hide
and that's like literally one of my favorite scenes, because like there's
in the background you can hear him and he's like, I'm not being weird, you guys are being weird.
Right, yeah. And it's just like because it's such like a, I don't know, like that speaks higher volumes to me than like any sort of like flipping your eyelids or like doing like a back walkover or whatever. It's just like, it's just so like there's this uncontrolled sexuality where it is just kind of like, of course, like this kid Aiden has no idea what's going on with in his body, and he doesn't know how to treat his peers to the point where he's just like, do you get blowjobs? Like, just kind of like, he's dying for anything
It's
like that.
It sounds like something that like he heard his like older brother ask a girl.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I thought that's where like a lot of the core of the film came. And obviously, I have no real qualifications to talk about this, obviously, but this film, and I don't think Bo Burnham maybe doesn't have either, but like it's just kind of like boys are like that in this film. And there's like a scene in a car too. That's a high schooler boy. That's different. Whatever. 8th grade boys are all about nude pictures, blowjobs, masturbating in class. And girls just kind of have this kind of like, what if I look at a picture of him on Instagram and like kiss the back of my hand? And maybe that is kind of like how it is. Like, I think boys definitely go through something else hormonally. But I also have read like a few articles where it's like, no, girls are like weird and horny too. I don't know. It was just kind of like to dive into some parts of sexuality and then not dive into other parts. I don't know. It was just like a weird.
Well, I mean, I don't think you have to be necessarily a female to recognize that like male sexuality, because the society we live in, is allowed to be more overt, and a boy is allowed to be like, oh yeah, do you give blowjobs? Whereas like a girl like Kayla does in this, when she's just like having feelings of that kind and she's kissing the back of her hand, has to throw her phone across the room when her dad enters the room, because it's that like removed from what's allowed in society, essentially. And I don't know, I think a lot of the like complaints that I expressed about this movie after coming out of it, like my girlfriend Rowan saw it with me.
But I feel like
she kind of like had rebuttals for all that, where she was like, no, that's like very spot on what it was like, to grow up as like an 8th grade girl.
Right.
So I don't like, there's things that I thought like, man, like, is that really your place to say it, Bo? But then like, women that I know that are seeing it are being like, he got it like 100%. Like no one has ever related in this way with me in a movie. So I don't know. There's both sides of the coin there.
Right. Definitely.
Like part of me is like, is that really your story to tell? But then I'm also like, but no one else is telling that story and you're doing it really effectively. So maybe it is your story. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of like Lady Bird, where it's kind of like younger boys will disappoint. Like, younger boys will just ultimately disappoint you. Like the Timothée Chalamet character in Lady Bird. But,
we can maybe talk about that car scene, because that's like I don't know if iconic is the word, but it's the scene that sticks with everyone from this movie, for sure.
It was definitely on my mind during the car scene. Like, it was already uncomfortable enough.
Thinking about Bo Burnham writing this, or
just watching the scene itself, and then thinking like, just picturing Bo Burnham, behind everything. I'm like, like you're saying, like, is this his to tell? Like,
I guess the maybe the saving grace of the fact is that it's very incriminating of men in this. Like, there's nothing really in this movie that's like, oh, well, here's why men do this.
It's not apologetic.
Like, it gives no excuses for men in that way. So I guess you maybe give him, a little bit of credit for that, for being, giving this really hard look at, male sexuality in those young ages.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I actively hated the car scene at first. Just in terms, I thought it was like really well shot, and I thought it was like a not cool, but like a well done scene for another movie. I thought it felt really out of place with this movie at first. I think it grew on me the more I let it like sink in and sort of like stew with what the rest of the message of the movie is.
It's just like I said about the karaoke scene. There were a ton of scenes in this film where I said, oh, is this like the last scene? Or is this the penultimate scene? Or is this the last big event that happens in this girl's life before this film ends? Maybe I should have gotten more out of my mind with things like that. But it was just kind of like, is this the... I don't know what movie to compare.
I mean, I think it
to.
is ultimately the climax of the movie. It's or at least it's the effector of change in this movie. It sort of moves things forward in a positive or negative way for the rest of the characters. I don't know. It felt out of place at first, but I think that is intentional, and I think that actually ends up making sense upon reflection. Like at first I was just kind of like, it's this movie about like being shy and awkward, and about sort of social interactions, and like what place is there really for a scene about this. But then like the more I think about it, like if the movie is sort of through Kayla's point of view, like that's how it would feel for her, because the rest of her life would just be these sort of things, and then you get kind of coerced into this like really uncomfortable situation that you had no idea was coming out of anywhere. And that's kind of what we see as the viewer, is like we're watching this fun and bubbly sort of uncomfortable look at like social situations, and then like the real world kind of butts in, and it's like, oh, like here's actual sexual abuse about to take place right here. And that's what it would be like for Kayla, really.
Right.
She has no idea that
Just
that's
as out of left field for her.
yeah, she has no idea that that's coming.
Man, what senior in high school is like, time to hook up with this 8th grader?
Well, that's the thing, is again, I thought that was weird at first, but I think it's really well set up in this, because they have the scene before that in the cafeteria. I do really like the whole relationship with Kayla and Olivia, the like high school shadow person that she's shadowing. I thought that was really set up really well. And then they're in the cafeteria, and I think they're doing a nice job of setting up the dynamic between these 4 friends that are hanging out. And they have the one scene where the one more talkative guy is like, what's the guy's name? Riley is the fucked up guy. He's like, Riley, like, you're being real quiet over there. Like, shut up, like stop, interrupting the conversation, or whatever, making fun of him for not really participating in the conversation. It's kind of putting him at like the bottom of the totem pole, or the pecking order for like all these high schoolers. And then like they have the scene where Kayla like sort of tries to relate to him, and she's like, sometimes like my friends like think that I'm quiet, and he's like, I'm not quiet, you're quiet. And makes her feel like shit. And it sort of sets him up as this character where like, if you're trying to imagine what kind of high schooler would be such a monster to like try to do that with like a helpless 8th grader, it's the type of guy who's at like the bottom of the pecking order, who has no power in social situations. And who does he have power over? An 8th grader. And that's really what sexual coercion and all these things are about, is power and stuff like that. And I thought that he did set that up pretty well, through the filmmaking and the screenwriting there. Because like, again, it's really uncomfortable at first, and then you reflect on it and you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense for Riley. Like he is kind of that person who doesn't really get any respect in his friends group, and is looking for somewhere that he can exert his power over someone.
I do like that. I don't know. It is just like an uncomfortable scene to sit with.
Oh, absolutely. The way it's shot too, like when he gets into the back seat, and then there's like just like the street light outside, kind of like,
oh, it's beautifully lit.
And there's no like light on his face. You can't even like see what sort of expressions he's making, and it's terrifying.
It didn't really jump out to me. Like I didn't find it so jarring, because the moment she said like, "Oh, you don't have to drop me off first," I knew. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna end well."
Oh,
like,
yeah,
definitely. Like, I almost you had a little bit of a warm up to it.
Yeah,
I almost wish that wasn't in there, and that like him pulling over like would blindside you. Yeah, but the minute the older girl was like, "Oh, is she?" Like, and she didn't really put up too much of a fight. Then I was like, I know it's coming. Yeah, I don't know. I can't truly verbalize completely how I feel about that scene.
I mean, positive or negative?
No. I love it, and it's an incredibly hard scene to watch, just because that happens.
I was like physically squirming during that scene, because like once you start realizing what's taking place, like you're saying, like when she's like, oh, like drop me off or drop her off first. And he's like, oh, she's right here. And she leaves. And then when he's back, and I can barely hear you back there. And then he pulls over and you're like, oh, no, I can see it a mile away. And just physically uncomfortable to watch that scene.
Yeah. Very.
I thought it was tactfully done though. Like
Oh,
it
definitely.
went far enough to the point where I was kind of worrying. I was like, I don't expect this to get,
Yeah.
really fucked up, but I hope it doesn't. And it was just effective enough, I think, because you're gonna be uncomfortable no matter what. But they didn't have to cross any.
And they didn't
boundaries.
Because without being too disrespectful of the scene or situations like this, the beauty of this scene is that nothing really happens. A guy takes off his shirt, and
A guy attempts coercion. Yes, in the scene,
right, yeah.
And then essentially tries to gaslight her afterwards because they
Yes.
have the scene driving back, and she's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, it's whatever. Like, I was just trying to help you out. You're going to get to high school and nobody's going to like you because you're not going to know what you're doing sexually. Like, the typical guy bullshit from, that age of life.
But that's definitely like the true horror of the scene is that nothing happens, but it's like anything could have happened. It's just like
it's scary, that switch that happens too, like when he's trying to make something happen and he's in the back seat, and then like his attitude of just being like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, whatever, and then he goes in the front seat and him sort of trying to like make her feel guilty about what happened back
and
there.
she does too.
Yeah.
Instead of, you can tell she's not angry at him. She's saying like, please, I don't forget I don't remember the girl's name. Amy.
Don't
Tell
her,
Amy.
where he should be like, don't tell me. Yeah, right.
And where in his mind he was like, oh, nice, like I'm
Yeah.
good. Like,
Sick.
Yeah. Oh no, don't worry, I got you.
I did really enjoy the scene where they're in the food court of the mall, and then like the girl catches like her dad kind of like spying on them, and then she goes into the photo booth, and like through like that thin kind of like slice between like the curtain and the side of the photo booth, like the dad's like talking to her, and he's just like, I don't know, dads just do weird things sometimes, and it's just like, that's so heartbreaking. His performance
he's my
is
absolute
so,
favorite part of this movie.
Yeah, what really annoyed me about this movie is the theater that I saw it in. I had like a cluster of like girls who were maybe like college age sitting behind me, and I think they wanted so desperately to be like, oh, this is gonna be a funny movie, kind of. And like the first scene where she just has like her headphones in and they're eating dinner or whatever, and they would laugh at everything he said, but like really, I don't think that's a funny scene at all. I think that's like a father genuinely trying to reach out to her daughter. I think there's a tinge of humor of just like, whatever, dad, like kind of, and then him being like, well, I think you're the coolest, that like
I think it is funny in that sort of like relatable way if you've had a dad who's like that.
But I don't think it's like a reason to like lose your shit laughing like these girls were doing, like it. And I could like almost be like, you feel good now, but I feel like I instinctively knew it was coming in this movie. I was like, buckle up, girls, kind of. But then again, who am I to say that? Maybe that was super funny, and I wasn't a middle school girl who was ignoring my dad, and when you see something that you identify with, maybe that's super funny. It's just kind of like,
they could have been laughing at her because I thought Elsie Fisher's performance was a pretty comedic performance in that scene, because she does a great job of just like keep putting the headphones back in and be like,
right, yeah,
sure, like almost like actively trying to sound disinterested in whatever he's saying.
Yeah, I think I'm also I definitely have ADD. In any sound around me triggers me kind of, and I react to that. It also like cracks me up that I feel like I've never wanted to admit this, but like when I saw Moonlight and everybody was like really loud, it was just like African American people in like the theater who were just kind of like all identifying with like some of this stuff. And I was like, stop being so loud in my head. But I was really like, who am I? Like, I'm just this fucking shithead and white guy. I don't know.
Shithead who didn't give Moonlight a perfect score, you idiot.
How dare you?
No, I still think the third act.
The poster hangs right behind you.
I still think the third act of that movie was weak.
Actually, I saw some people on Twitter because Barry Jenkins is pretty active on Twitter. He like responds to a lot of people, and someone tweeted at him like, "Man, I still got some complaints with the third act of Moonlight," and he responded with some kind of funny gif. It was funny. I thought of you.
Yeah.
I was like, this person feels like Joe does.
It was a perfect movie up until the third act.
I think the only scene we haven't really touched on of major importance is like the campfire scene in this.
Which is heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's probably my favorite scene in the movie.
Same.
I mean, they have the car scene, and then that sort of spurs her to, she shuts down her YouTube channel. And then we're kind of just wrapping things up for the year. Because, I mean, it all takes place over the course of a week for her. And she got like in the beginning of the movie, excuse me, she gets like the 6th grade time capsule back. And she keeps looking at this like SpongeBob zip drive, or flash drive rather. And she finally gets like the courage to plug it into her computer and watch it. And it's like 6th grade her talking kind of like she does in her YouTube videos now to 8th grade her. And it's great because like her performance like shows how much she's embarrassed by it, but us watching it, we're like, it's basically just her now. Like she hasn't really aged at all, like from 6th grade to 8th grade. But again, it's very effective to put us in the mind of an 8th grader, like looking at 6th grade, which was 2 years ago, to be like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed by like what I was back then, you know?
It's also this beautiful, I don't know. I got like super like, this is like the part of the film that really started to like hit at me. I was like, oh man, like I love that, like just like I love like the filmmaking of that, like opening the box and kind of like looking through all the shit that doesn't mean anything and looking at this stupid little SpongeBob figurine, and then like later it being revealed that it's like a USB flash drive, but then also just her looking at her maybe like 3 years ago, and I don't know, there's such like a sci-fi concept to this almost, where it's kind of like I'm watching myself in video form 3 years ago, who has such like hopes and aspirations about what is about to happen, and this just very like idealistic like look at like what middle school is going to be, kind of. I don't know. It was so bizarre to watch, and it was so like, it was just kind of like we didn't have like access to like, that was like what really hit me, is that we didn't have like access to like technology to like leave ourselves like a video journal through like a MacBook Pro or something, you know, like that's so weird, kind of. I don't know. Yeah, that really got me, and I like really started to think of like a sci-fi concept of like that. Like it's just weird. It's like and she is looking back, and she's just like, you don't know what's about to happen, kind of, and you don't. It's just
because her 6th grade self is like, oh, like you probably have like a boyfriend now and a lot of friends, and you're really happy and popular, and she's just sitting there feeling like incredibly low because of all these things that have happened throughout the course of the film, whether they're in her head or not. And that couldn't be further from the truth for her, and she's also just embarrassed to like look at herself from 6th grade.
I love that concept. That's such a beautiful scene.
So then she brings the time capsule out to the campfire, and she wants to she asks her dad, like, can you help me burn something?
One of the 3 things she does actually say to her dad, just, can you help me burn something?
I love that he is just like, yeah, sure.
Okay. Like, you're interacting with me, I guess. Sure, let's see where this goes.
I think a lot of the dialogue is perfectly written for him, because he's obviously someone who's very sincere, but trying to be concerned at the same time. Like, I love when they're about to burn it, and he's like, I'm totally down for like this, but like, is this a positive thing or a negative thing that we're about to do right now?
And she's just like, that's like also like the beauty of like this dad's performance. Like, you can never like look at him and be like, oh, he's a good dad or he's a bad dad. I mean, like, it obviously leans towards like he's a good dad, and it's just kind of like with kids like this, kind of obviously during this campfire scene, he exposes, or he just reveals his feelings that like, hey, look, I've never been worried about you. Like, you're doing just fine, kind of. But it is kind of like this thing, like, it brings you back to the dinner scene where it's just kind of like, he's something that's just kind of like orbiting around her. And like whenever she gives him an opening, like you go in there and you expose as much of yourself as you can to her.
He's trying his best.
That's like what a good dad is, and I really love. And it's never like, oh, I would have had a better relationship with my daughter if she wasn't on this damn iPhone all the time. It's just kind of like, nope. That's a fucking symptom of the time. That's just like other things were happening during other times. Kids would just be even more rude, just with their fucking I'll just stare at my fucking dinner plate and not talk to you. I don't need a phone to block you out. And I think that's like, it's such like a beautiful relationship. Yeah, I really like it.
Another scene that I really liked is when she keeps like Googling like basically like how to give a good blowjob and stuff after the Aiden scene, and then she goes and finds like the bananas in the kitchen, and she's about to perform fellatio on the bananas, and her dad walks in and she's trying to like awkwardly explain like what she's doing with bananas, and he's like, you don't like bananas. Like I wrote a note in my iPhone that you specifically don't like bananas because you said that I never listen to the things that you don't like. And it's like him like trying his best, and she gets so frustrated with not being able to like obviously say what she's about to do with the banana that she just throws it at him. And it's like, I thought that was a great scene because I feel like there's probably so many points in like a parent's life when they're raising someone of that age where something completely random like that happens and you're like, what the fuck did I do to set off that kind of rage? And it is probably something that they're too embarrassed to tell you that like you couldn't understand, or they think you couldn't understand.
And like, on the other hand, it's also so funny that like this film and this screenplay like exposes that like the dad's like like the girl with the pool party or whatever. It's like, no, she doesn't not like you. Like, like sometimes kids are just going through other shit. Like, and like where she's actually the wiser, where it's kind of like, no, she's just spitefully not liking me to like preserve her kind of pecking order, like it's like this really great balance of kind of sometimes, yes, dad's wisdom is right, and then sometimes dad can't relate. He doesn't totally know what I'm going through. It's a very even keel kind of balance.
But that campfire scene is hard to hold back the tears during that one. I thought that the sort of underlying message of that was able to, as a final sort of scene to a movie should, like encapsulate basically the whole, what I thought was the message of the movie in like a subtle way. And it's kind of like in 8th grade, you're so focused on who you want to be or who you think you're supposed to be that you're not really focused on, or you're also very focused on who you were, especially in this, like her trying to burn her 6th grade self. Like you don't really know who you are because you're so focused on, the future and the past, and everyone else around you at the same time is so focused, for themselves on who am I going to be? Who was I? They don't see who they are, and they don't see who you are at the same time. And like the only person who really is truly capable of looking at someone at that age and seeing who they truly are is, like a parent. And, you have this character of Kayla who, thinks that she wants to be all these things, and she's trying on all these different sort of masks and personalities to figure out who she wants to be, and she doesn't know that she is like pretty okay like as she is right now. And like that's a really touching concept to me. Like his like speech, it almost sounds like a little like he's like reaching at first, but I think it's actually like a really nice concept of like, you don't have to be like some like piano virtuoso to make your parents proud. Like sometimes it's enough to just be like easy to raise. And like that's his whole point, is like, I wasn't worried. Like I didn't have to teach you how to walk. I didn't have to teach you how to talk. Like you just got it and it was fine. And that was great for me as a single dad raising you to not have to like, work super hard to make that happen. I'm like getting teary eyed right now just thinking about it. It's like it's a really nice scene and concept in this movie.
Yeah. No, I had a really fantastic like 7th grade teacher, and she had us read something. And maybe it is. I don't know how popular it is, but like the I forget what the author, like Jerry Spinelli or something. He did like Maniac McGee, which won like a Newbery Award, and then I think like Ringer.
Did he do Swallowing Stones?
I don't know.
The name sounds very familiar.
Like Stargirl. I don't know what else. But I think his like debut novel was something called like Space Station 7th Grade, and it is like this. Obviously, has nothing to do with space stations, but it's just the concept that your kind of traveling between these two places at this point in youth, and you're just kind of trying to adjust. Like at this, like 7th grade is like really this like midway point between these 2 points, and you're just like, what the fuck, where am I? Like just total, if you're in a space station and you're just trying to readjust during like this trip or whatever, and it's just, I don't know, puberty's kicking in and all these weird things are happening. I think like this is like a really great like film version of like what that book was trying to be too. Middle school is such a weird fucking time, and I'm glad this film kind of, I mean, middle school's great for some people. I don't know. For me, it was more like this, and then high school, I was just kind of like, oh, it's a lot better.
I kind of like the opposite. I had like
Really?
a really positive. I mean, I was homeschooled for most of middle school, and then went to a Christian private school in 8th grade. Had like an awesome time because all my homeschool friends started going to school at the same time, so we
Right.
weren't even like individual new kids. We were just a new group. We had each other. And then when I went to high school, I was like the new guy who was like the homeschooled Christian school guy. So I feel like a lot of the things that I relate to in this movie are my feelings about freshman year of high school and not my feelings about 8th grade.
That's how it is for me too.
Yeah.
8th grade was a high point, and then for some reason, something about getting like stuck into high school, I felt very much like she did. Like it resonated with me a lot. Just in
Yeah,
its
I mean,
slightly
like,
different setting.
me and Alex went to the same high school, and it was like, like all the middle schools were separate, and then all the districts went to the same high school. So it was like I mean, I didn't have this experience, but I know a lot of people were like raised with all the same kids through all of, elementary school and middle school. And then in high school, you're with 2 other districts, and you are sort of a new kid to 2/3 of the population there. So
You
I
go
can
from top of the pecking order to you're at the bottom again, and
Yeah.
everybody seems so much older now because they're seniors in high school. And
Yeah,
they have cars,
yeah.
so
yeah, I can see that.
I think I felt like this mostly during 7th grade, and then I think some of it traveled. But high school was such like a better experience for me, and I do like that she has that like positive kind of like high school influence. That's like, hey man, you can do whatever the fuck you want in high school.
Yeah.
Like it gets better, kind of. I would even
She leaves her in the car with.
Right, but again, it's just kind of like, can you trust a fucking like that fucking high schooler is just so airheaded, and you know, like any high schooler would be. It's hard to blame her for that. Yeah, I don't know. If any middle schooler happens to be listening to this, I think high school gets better and then college gets even better.
That was
like,
a kind of weird thing with this, that it got the R rating, the hard R rating.
I think this could have passed for a PG-13 movie.
Well, I think in a lot of the high schooler scenes, they're just using the F word a lot.
Right.
Because they're just trying to talk like real high schoolers. And
I think it's also a problem of an indie studio and an indie movie, and the
maybe they don't really have the pull to.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, with the rating. I forget what the organization's called.
I also feel like, I mean, like if a real studio made this, they would have been like, yeah, no, you're taking those F words out of the scene. You'll make it work, Bo, without it. We're not making this movie as an R-rated movie about 8th grade. Who's going to go see it?
Right.
But like I know, like when I went to see it, I got carded at a movie for the first time in the longest
Really?
time. For some reason, the content of this movie makes theaters very uncomfortable. And like you said that you got carded at this, right? Or
no, but a group of girls got into the movie and then
Yeah, that's right.
then got carded and taken out of the
Yeah.
movie. Maybe it's the car scene. Maybe it's how
think
volatile they
there's a-
figure that can be if you're not at the age where you can kind of perceive it properly. Maybe
it's
it's a little
unfortunate
too intense.
because I think it's the thing where I think A24 views it as like this is like something you should view at that
Right.
time.
They did a
and they,
night,
they did
yeah.
a campaign on, it was like a Wednesday night where they had a bunch of theaters that were willing to participate, and it was just kind of like, it's a free movie night. You can go see it for free, and because it's free, we're not carding.
We're not carding anybody. Right.
And so
Yeah.
like anybody of any age could go see 8th grade. And that was kind of cool. I wish they had been able to do more of that, and that maybe it hadn't been stuck with this like R-rated stigma, you know,
Right, and that's
where they're carding it more than I feel like they card, you know, a lot of the other dramas that I went to see that were R-rated.
And that is so important because, again, like this, like Space Station 7th grade book, it was just kind of like, whoa, here's like what aggressive, like hormones feel like,
Yeah.
like sexually aggressive hormones or whatever. It's just kind of like, what you're trying to protect your kids from is actually what's actively happening to them right now.
And like for us watching it, like,
Right.
you know, like what's really the benefit of the message is like, oh, like 8th grade was weird for us.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's like actual people who could watch this movie and be like, it's going to be okay. Like, you know, everyone has, you know, like the one thing that Olivia says is like, I had like the worst time in like 8th grade. Like, you know, and, you know, Kayla looks at Olivia as this like super stable, settled, like confident high schooler. And that's kind of the message of this movie. It's like 8th grade's weird for everyone. Nobody has a good time. That's what the whole pool party montage is for me, is like everyone is this sort of weird alien creature in 8th grade. And we're all sort of adjusting to our bodies as they're adjusting to, you know, the hormones inside of them. And, you know, everyone has a weird time.
Yeah, I also that shadowing scene is so beautiful because it's just like you can get out of your bubble, and I think that's what going to high school is. It's just again, like middle school for me was just the same fucks I went to like elementary school with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to call them fucks. I don't know why that came out. I mean, obviously I'm being mixed in with a few other elementary schools, but like you really start stirring the pot, baby, when like it's just like high school and it's like all these different middle schools who have a combination of all these different elementary schools and everything, and like everybody can really find a place. Again,
Yeah.
I went to a high school where like there was maybe like 1,000 people in each class, so it was like you could find
There was 1,000 in our whole school.
Oh, okay, yeah, like with my school you could really find your like niche, you know, like it was
Or disappear if you wanted to.
yeah, definitely.
I really like with the whole shadowing sort of storyline that like the night before she like actually prays to God. I love the one scene where she also like says that she believes in God, just like as a random character building thing.
Right.
I thought that was nice. But her, yeah, like praying to God, like, you know, like she says like, you can make like the rest of the days like kind of like awful, but like I just need tomorrow specifically to
you
be
can
good.
give me a bunch of bad days
Yeah.
in the future, which is how we all, I mean, even if you don't believe in God, you know, even at a young age, I don't think I believed in God, but like I would go to God to barter.
Yeah.
To barter, like tomorrow is important. I'll take like a bunch of sick days, you know, in the future, but let tomorrow be okay.
And I think that's kind of
Yeah.
like part of the beauty of the script for me is that it does actually turn out great that day, but it ends up leading to something awful
Yes.
later in her life. Just kind of a two-sided coin there. But anyway, we can probably, unless you have any other nagging thoughts, we can. I think this is just like a one sentence observation, but I think the timeline gets really weird at the end of this movie.
Okay.
With like the whole graduation thing, they do sort of like a non-linear thing at one point for no benefit, really. Like,
What's the nonlinear?
I'm sort of like struggling to remember exactly what it goes back and forth from, but it goes
Okay.
to like the graduation scene. Then there's like the scene in the hallway, and then they go to something else.
What's the scene in the hallway? Sorry.
It's her confronting the girls.
Okay, right. Okay,
Being like,
right,
I gave
right,
you the
right.
Go
Okay,
Fish game. It's actually really fun if you would have played it. And
waiting for graduation.
Yeah.
Like at the graduation, but before it, yeah.
right. And then there's like something else that happens because then she goes, I think what they're trying to do is get the narration from her 8th grade box going. It's either something that happens before graduation or after, and then they let the narration go, and then they go back to graduation, and then they just go to a scene. Like it kind of jumps around a little bit. Yeah. I remember being like, I don't know what time we're supposed to be following here, and like I'm all for like non-linear if it like makes sense or like really benefits the movie, but it was just kind of like in a movie that's pretty linear for most of
film has been
it just
mostly
jumped
linear,
around
yeah.
for a little bit at the end. It kind of confused me a little bit.
I kind of didn't like the Rick and Morty references.
I loved it.
I was kind of like, it was like literally at the beginning. I think Alex said that like this is going, like something is going to date the movie, and I was like, I feel like Rick and Morty is going to date this movie. But then again, Rick and Morty got signed for like 7 or 10 more seasons, so maybe it will.
Rick and Morty will
have
be the next Simpsons.
You're right. Maybe we'll have like incredible longevity.
I mean, I don't think you have to. I'm someone who's never actually watched Rick and Morty. I mean, I think you know you can understand that it's more just about them connecting over like something like she's found someone that she has a shared interest with, where she's going to these pool parties and she has nothing in common with all these people there.
Right.
She's the girl who like one of his other beautiful montages in this is like she's on like Tumblr with like Harry Potter fan fiction and stuff when she's like scrolling through all the different websites of her like nightly routine.
And I also don't want to say that I hate that scene.
The Tumblr montage? Or?
No, just the Rick and Morty kind of. I love that that's the character she kind of like continues to like be with.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like that it's very awkward kind of until they kind of start doing a bit with each other, because I feel like that I almost feel like bits are kind of like the core of relationships sometimes, no matter what age you are.
I didn't even really necessarily get the sense that it was like a relationship that they were starting.
Oh no, but yeah,
just a
even
friendship.
If it's a friend,
really. Somebody,
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a cute scene.
Yes.
It was a very like in a movie that's very uncomfortable to watch. That was like that scene, despite being like awkwardness between them, feels very comfortable because that there's sort of something beautiful happening at the same time.
It was both for me.
Yeah.
It was very endearing, and at the same time, I was like, "But this is still really cringy."
He's a very awkward.
Yeah.
The actor is great who plays the.
Oh my
little
god,
kid there.
it's
perfect.
when they have like when they're in the pool or whatever, and it's like
I could do a handstand.
It's perfect with like, it's perfect that he's her cousin. It's just kind of like, oh, I don't go to this school. Like, I'm just going to talk to this girl. You know, like, it's just so, again, that kind of plays into why is nobody talking to this girl that's so bizarre, kind of. But, like, it's also just, like, sometimes it's just, like, you talk to somebody, like you're in middle school, and all of a sudden, like, somebody who's not in, like, I remember, like, when I was, I think, in 8th grade, and, like, I got invited to, like, this like art show at a college or whatever, just because something I made got invited there. And then like I was just like talking to other girls in like 8th grade kind of, and just at other middle schools, and they treated me like completely differently. I was just like, this is
you don't have like when you put kids through the same school system, there's all this baggage of like, I remember that weird thing you did in fucking 5th grade.
Yes.
Like, or us talking about things that like kids that I didn't go to school with, but like, it was like, stories that got added to things that I knew about people, even though I didn't go to school with them at that time. And it was like, you did that weird thing at the talent show in 4th grade, or, you said that weird thing to that one girl in 7th grade. And it's just kind of like these people that you have all this accumulated baggage with them. And I think that is sort of the message that Olivia is also trying to get across. Is like when you go to high school, it's kind of like the slate is clean. Like, you don't have to be, most quiet, your superlative from 8th grade.
Right.
Like you can kind of reinvent yourself and be whatever you want to be.
Right. Agreed.
Right. Well, I think that's about all the reviewing we got in us.
I don't even have anything left to say about this.
Let me review the Rotten Tomatoes, and then we'll get into our ratings.
Let's do it.
On review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 98%. Wow. Based on 161 reviews with an average rating of 8.8 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, 8th grade takes a look at its titular time period that offers a rare and resounding ring of truth while heralding breakthroughs for writer-director Bo Burnham and captivating star Elsie Fisher.
I also loved that he casted her. She's such a perfect... I mean, with somebody with like fucking cystic acne in like, high school and even like a little bit of college kind of. And just also like just thinking about like Blockers, like The Edge of 17, which I like, just gorgeous like teenagers or like beyond teenagers. It's really they're casting backwards, 19 20-year-olds kind of to play like high schoolers who are 17 18
She's
16
actually
kind of.
15 years old
right
now.
yeah she's actually just she went into high school after she did this kind of. I think that's like super positive. It was just kind of like, say what you will about girls, but like when Lena Dunham was like, oh no, yeah, like shoot me naked. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not like what you see on TV. Like,
I just hope it's not like, here's 8th grade and then nobody's willing to cast Elsie Fisher after this because she's not your, stereotypical Haley Steinfeld or whoever is getting cast as like high school girls now.
I don't know. I don't
like,
know.
I don't know who's going to give her a leading role after this. Looking at the, the landscape of like who gets cast now. Like,
I don't know if I need her for the... I don't know. I don't know what...
You're fine with this just being all she does.
Yeah, like I don't know what what she wants the future of her life to be, especially when you're
15,
like you're just a freshman in high school now or whatever. You've got the rest of your life to figure out. I don't know. Just kind of like when I see like just updates like, oh, Zach and Cody are like go to college at NYU. I'm like, good. I'm glad they didn't just fucking like be
Wasn't
like
the one in Riverdale.
Yeah. The one
he's
is in
still acting.
Riverdale, but like it's just like, oh, good. Like I'm glad they're getting like a bachelor's degree or whatever.
I guess I just mean that she's
I know what you
she's
mean.
so
Yes.
talented that I hope
Yeah.
that someone else is able to see past like
Yeah, even if it's still within A24, where if anywhere, maybe they'll be like, oh, there's a...
I mean, hopefully Bo
There's a role for
Burnham
you.
makes more movies and there's a connection
brings
there.
her back. My God, yeah. Another thing, that fucking, especially the pool party where we have a following shot from behind, kind of, and it's just like that fucking slouch. Like you can really see it when like there's more of her skin exposed, and she's just like, her shoulders are so forward, and she's so slouched, and she's so. It's such a fantastic performance for somebody her age.
Even like I love a lot of like the little things she'll do when she's doing like the YouTube videos, and she'll like misspeak and she'll go like bleh, just kind of like just sort of like spit out like the when she misspeaks something, like it's just like a little like character thing that she added in there that is,
That was
like,
another
so accurate.
There was another thing. Two things about the same thing. I heard that Bo Burnham kind of those scenes where she's looking into the camera or whatever and doing her whole spiel. I actually love the format of that and everything. How it's a slow zoom out and it's all one take. Apparently, Bo Burnham literally scripted that dialogue to the T, kind of. Which is cool, because I think you would think like a lot of this film is improvised or influenced by the actors, but apparently like he was very strict about what he had written and everything and what he thought like a nervous 8th grader sounded like, which it worked out.
It makes sense too. I mean, if that's your first script too, you're also
most
a
definitely
little less willing to give up the reins to the actors.
Right. It's your first script. You're not going to write like long monologue, maybe something about being nervous. Like it's just kind of like, but also some of those went on for too long for me. I was just kind of like, my ADD is kicking in. Like I've lost interest. Like I love long shots, but like it was just maybe the meandering of the 8th grade, like, and it's just kind of like, yes, I know that's how they actually talk and everything, but it's just kind of like, I was like, I get it, and I'm starting to be pulled out of this movie by this. Yeah, that's all.
I don't know if we had any Facebook comments about this one. I'll check if anyone wants to start with their rating.
I think maybe Kristen said something about this when she first saw this film, but I don't.
Oh, we do. All right. Riley, good old fan Riley. Riley Slate said, watching this film made me realize how different middle school experiences are from when I was in 8th grade. Now that all middle schoolers have phones and social media, Bo Burnham said that middle schoolers should watch this movie, but I can imagine it being cringeworthy for them. I think the real experience is being able to reflect back on your own middle school experience as an adult and laugh at yourself. It's from Riley Slate.
Yo, shut up!
Yo, what is that noise?
Yo, shut the fuck! Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, I think I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say. I don't know. I was caught between a 3.5 and a 4 for this film, but I think I'm gonna lean towards 4 because I would love to see more movies like this in the future. Just maybe because it didn't pertain to my personal taste, I would love to see something more like this. I mean, again, especially with the casting, it at points reminded me of like Gus Van Sant's Elephant, where I know he just like went into that high school and was like, all right, we're gonna make this Columbine now, you know, and it was just like filming all these kids kind of. I do think like mumblecore is like a little kind of overdone now. I love the genre. This definitely borrows hard from that genre. Yeah, so I thought it was like a little overused kind of. But yeah, overall, I would probably say go see this, definitely, if you haven't seen this. It's a good movie. Yeah, so I'm going to give it 4 fingers.
I think I'm also going to give it 4. I think comparing it to sort of the like reception that it's had, I think it's maybe a little overrated. Like, there's a ridiculous amount of praise for this movie, and like,
Yeah.
if you just like go on like Twitter, like it just became a thing to see the movie as like a famous person and then tweet at like Bo Burnham, telling him how much like you liked it, and like one of my favorite Viners, Danny Gonzalez, like tweeted at Bo Burnham, sort of like making fun of that, being like, I saw 8th grade, so I feel like I have to tweet at Bo Burnham now and tell you how great the movie was. And it is great, but I think it's not without some flaws, like the things that I brought up in terms of there's definitely a certain uncomfortability with the fact that it's entirely male written and directed when it's such a movie about the female experience. And I guess, you know, thank God he got it right, because it would be a really awkward thing if this was, you know, not really relatable to anyone at all. And it would maybe, you know, force a conversation about like, hey, maybe let's leave those stories for, you know, people to tell their own stories about those experiences.
Right.
But I have heard from so many people about how relatable this experience or this movie is about their 8th grade experience. But I think for me personally, as someone who considers myself to be pretty shy and anxious in a lot of social situations, I didn't connect with it as much as I wanted to, or as I expected to, based on a lot of the reception that it got. I thought the things that I liked about it were more the filmmaking side of it. I think he's got a good eye for a lot of things, especially for a first film. And I thought the comedy was great, and the drama in a lot of it too. I think like Josh Hamilton's performance is fantastic as the father in this. Obviously Elsie Fisher is great, and everyone else is great too. But yeah, I mean, all that's great. I think Bo has a good eye for montages in this movie. I think the soundtrack is perfect, sort of the way that it sort of settles into the movie later on, and the performances and the humor. But yeah, a little off at parts like we said before, where it's serving the what they wanted the movie to be more than what the movie actually grows to be. You know, parts where that's not really what a shy, anxious 8th grader would do. You know, they wouldn't just get up and start singing karaoke because their YouTube narration wants them to do that.
Right.
But it's a fantastic first movie. It's a pretty good movie overall, so I'm going to give it 4 fingers out of 5. One of my favorites of the year, for sure. I would definitely recommend people go see it.
I found that Christine Murawski.
Kristen?
Yes. Kristen writes. No, nothing. It was like almost a month ago. I think she saw it just because she's a city gal. Yeah, but she came on to review Lady Bird. But she said, just got out of viewing of 8th grade. Yes, so much. Yes, see. And you said, can't wait to check it out. Where did you see it? She said, the Ritz 5. Just did a free screening of it. Comes out Friday. I definitely recommend 5 fingers. So definitely, again, if you guys want to come onto our Facebook group and write things like that, by all means, give us your finger ratings, or, you know, tell us what movies you're seeing, because then we'd be more inclined to see them if we knew you guys were watching them. But after this commercial break, Alex, what did you think of 8th grade?
So my initial reaction, the thing I was most struck by was how much I did relate to it.
Right.
Again, in a slightly different time period of my life, but I was cringing the entire movie. If I wasn't laughing in those those certain moments where I did laugh very hard, I had one hand on my face, just like feeling the pain and kind of collapsing into myself. Mm-hmm. I found it very relatable. And I kind of liked it. It's not at all a horror movie, but there's almost some weird horror elements where it's like social horror, which I kind of liked because just recently with Hereditary, we finally saw sort of like emotional horror. And so it's just like another... you know, another flavor of horror to kind of add things. Not that I would classify it as a horror movie, but I thought it was very effective at doing that.
I did see they someone like switched the posters for Hereditary, and where they took the 8th grade poster and put like Hereditary on it, and then they took the like picture of like Millie Shapiro and put like 8th grade on it.
That's funny.
Hereditary. It was funny. Anyway, sorry.
No. And so yeah, that's really what stuck with me the most. Just the kind of realism for it, with some flaws in there, as we said. Some things a little unrealistic, but I think they were just a vessel to get from point A to point B. She had no friends so that she could meet that one kid and have that nice resolution at the end. Mm-hmm. The soundtrack was great. Again, it felt like Bo Burnham, and I assumed it was Bo Burnham, so it had his little flavor to it. And... funny enough, my reaction, I went with one friend at the end of it. My whole reaction was just how uncomfortable I felt the whole movie. His reaction was, wow, I've gone back and forth on the subject a lot, but after that last scene, it makes me really want to have kids. So it impacted him in that way, which I thought was pretty crazy. Wow. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty profound for this. But I would give it 4 fingers. I was bouncing between 3.5 and 4, but I think for what it did, and for what it did for me, at least, it was very effective. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, that makes my job very easy. Obviously, the overall score is 4 fingers. Unanimous 4 from us here on the podcast. Yeah, if you agree or disagree, like we've said, you can leave a comment below on SoundCloud or YouTube, or you can hit us up on Twitter, or most effectively, join the discussion already in progress on How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the Facebook group. Just search that on Facebook and join up. We'll get that going. Anything else, you can hit us up at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. Make sure you check out Alex's band, Bright Eyed Deliverance. Where can we find Bright Eyed Deliverance? BED.
Facebook.com/Bright Eyed Deliverance. Instagram @Bright Eyed Deliverance. Bandcamp.
Probably brighteyeddeliverance.bandcamp.com. I think they do it backwards like that. Yeah. Like Tumblr used to. All right. So check that out. And obviously you can check out our band, My Asphalt Victim. My Asphalt Victim on pretty much everything. I think it's MEFE on Twitter, but everything else is just My Asphalt Victim. So check that out. New music coming eventually.
TBD.
TBD. Adult life is busy. But yeah, that's about it for us. We'll see you guys next week for, I don't know. We're going to figure out what we're doing next batch, right?
Yeah.
But check out, last week we reviewed Christopher Robin. That was an interesting one.
Christopher Roberts.
And the week before that, The Meg with Sean Henry, also of Bright Eyed Deliverance.
It's a good episode. I know
we
that.
Hope.
We definitely recorded it already.
And also going to record it right now.
Yes.
All right. See you guys next week. Goodbye.
Bye.